Good evening, I'm Cynthia Ng. This is AWANI Tonight. Putrajaya has decided to ease hiring rules for foreign workers in Malaysia, allowing employers to hire foreign labour from 15 countries based on their needs without prerequisites or quotas. Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim says this will fall under the new plan to facilitate the hiring of foreign workers.
The 15 countries are India, Thailand, Cambodia, Nepal, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Philippines, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Indonesia and Kazakhstan. Anwar also said a Malaysian delegation will hold working visits with source countries to discuss matters related to the safety and welfare of foreign workers in Malaysia. Meanwhile, Home Minister Datuk Seri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail said the recalibration program of foreign workers will be extended to December 31st this year.
Program ini pertama mampu untuk menyediakan keperluan tenaga kerja daripada tenaga orang pekerja asing yang sudah ada dalam negara kita. Dah sedia ada. Kita buat saluran ini, mereka tampil dan kemudiannya mereka terus mereka buat bayaran dan kemudian mereka dibenarkan untuk bekerja.
Saifuddin added that the program had generated more than 700 million ringgit to government revenue as employers were required to pay a fee for their workers who do not have documentation. Previously, the program, which went on until December 31st, 2022, saw more than 410,000 undocumented migrants sign up to be regularized as legal foreign workers and another 295,425 sent back to their home countries.
The Health Ministry does not expect a new wave of COVID-19 infections to hit the country, given that the number of daily cases and hospitalization rates are on a downward trend. Health Director General Tan Sri Dr. Noor Hisham Abdullah says no new variants have been detected in Malaysia in a year, aside from the Omicron variant.
Setakat ni walaupun di US ada laporan XBB, kita ada XBB iaitu variant yang dominan untuk Omicron, tetapi XBB 1.5 yang telah baru-baru ni dilaporkan di US belum lagi dikesan di negara kita.
Noor Hisham said the Health Ministry was closely monitoring new variants, adding that stricter COVID-19 mitigation measures will be considered based on certain criteria. This includes a surge in the number of imported cases and the presence of new variants besides Omicron. Noor Hisham added that the government would maintain its SOPs for COVID-19 and not introduce any changes for the upcoming Thaipusam and Chinese New Year celebrations.
At the same time, Dr. Noor Hisham announces that Pfizer's bivalent vaccines will arrive in Malaysia by end of January. He says the vaccines were supposed to arrive late last year after it was approved by the National Pharmaceutical Regulatory Agency, but this was delayed due to the holiday season.
However, Noor Hisham could not provide an exact date, stating that this was an estimate by the pharmaceutical company. This is because the Health Ministry was still completing its first contract with Pfizer to only distribute monovalent vaccines. Bivalent vaccines were created by Pfizer to strengthen the current Comirnaty vaccine formulation. It contains components of the original COVID-19 strain that was first detected in Wuhan, China, along with the more recent Omicron subvariants.
The 10% sales tax on low-value goods (LVG) will be in effect from April 1st. According to the Royal Malaysian Customs Department, goods imported from overseas that are priced under 500 ringgit will be subject to the tax.
The tax covers all LVG sold online and delivered from overseas to customers in Malaysia, including in duty-free islands, Labuan, Langkawi, Tioman and Pangkor, as well as special areas like free zones by air, sea or land. It, however, will not be imposed on the delivery charges or insurance costs for the bringing in of the item from overseas to Malaysia. It will also not apply to imported alcohol and cigarettes. The LVG tax was announced in August last year, following a proposed amendment to the Sales Tax Act 2018. The date of implementation for the tax was originally slated for January 1st, before the postponement to April.
Prime Minister Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim has attempted to resolve the political turmoil in Sabah by suggesting the formation of a unity government in the state. Political analyst Mujibur Abdul Muiz discusses what are the options available to Datuk Seri Hajji Noor and if he can remain in his role as Chief Minister.
Well, there are two things that need to be observed. Number one, what kind of federal intervention that may salvage and of course solve the crisis in Sabah, since all of them in Sabah are now within this unity government in federal level. So Anwar Ibrahim as a Prime Minister may have a chances to solve this problem. And number two, of course, if this cannot be solved by the intervention from federal, this unity government can be resolved if there is a brave way, let's say, from Hajji to bring this matter to the State Assembly, and maybe a motion for confident vote can be tabled to solve this once for all. And if these two cannot happen, we are afraid that state election will be the last resort to solve this problem. At the federal level, we see how the royal intervention as well as the consensus among the party that we need to establish the government. And of course, under the leadership of Anwar Ibrahim, strong leadership of strong character on him, maybe put some bit reluctance for others to retract their support to Anwar Ibrahim, knowing that, of course, UMNO have their own problem, and with Zahid at the helm, this will more likely to help Anwar Ibrahim to stabilize government at the federal level. Compared to Sabah, of course, we don't see this thing resolved due to the fact that how Bersatu have been reflected during the federal level, and of course ongoing cases of these 4 MP. So the character between these cases may be different. And of course, looking back on how Sabah does not have any strong leaders that may galvanize everybody and of course form a very good unity government. And that's why I can simply see this problem can be solved if Anwar Ibrahim as a Prime Minister come to Sabah like he did last night to solve this problem.
Ahead of UMNO's annual General Assembly, which begins on Wednesday, all eyes are on UMNO President Datuk Seri Ahmad Zahid Hamidi as he prepares to face a stiff challenge for the top position. Amid backlash and internal rift, political analyst Mujibur Abdul Muiz says that Zahid can still make a strong impression with his presidential speech to win back support.
The important thing that need to be focused on simply because presidential speech will be basic thing that UMNO members will listen to because they will like to know what is UMNO's plan for the next move, especially with the idea of Zahid Hamidi now need to cooperate with Anwar after what he have done during the last general election when he steadfastly announced that no Anwar, no DAP will be their policy. So whether Zahid can use this General Assembly to convince UMNO and let that representative of UMNO decide whether they agree with his plan or there will be another backlash, especially when the rise of a new challenge for Zahid presidency from the outcast. So this dynamism will be the thing that we are going to focus on this motion on Zahid's speech, especially in deciding whether UMNO can stand a chance in the next election or shape a new realignment of UMNO as a very important political party in this unity government, as well as try to wrestle back the support of the Malay constituency in the next state election.
Even though UMNO handed in its worst electoral performance ever in G15, Mujibu believes Zahid will be able to withstand calls to step down and retain the presidency.
Since he is the incumbent, and of course, as a deputy prime minister and a federal minister, that thing will help him a lot, knowing how UMNO politics, that always depending on incumbent for the next project, for the next discussion. And of course, when you talk about others from the outcasts or others from the outside of the Zahid Hamid's camp, it is very difficult for you, knowing as well the tradition of UMNO. It is very difficult for anybody to defeat incumbent when they have an upper hand compared to others.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Perjalanan yang mereka akan lalui sangat mencabar, mengharungi badai dan hujan, dari benua ke benua. Namun, ada yang mendapat idea lain. Jika anda perlu terbang, terbanglah dengan lebih bijak.
Ayah, kita dah sampai ke belum?
Digi Postpaid teman setia kita.
Bila jam 5
Hidup kami berbeza dengan penjimatan jom gembira.
FB, IG, YouTube, TikTok, stream tiap masa.
Sosial puas-pas bermacam cerita.
Dengan Digi Postpaid,
kita buat semuanya.
Memang baik kan?
Kan? Jom tengok lagi, jom.
Welcome back. China has suspended its short-term visa service for South Koreans and Japanese in protest against the measures taken by the two countries to tighten border controls on arrivals from China. Now, this comes after Beijing reopened its borders on Sunday, removing its last major COVID restriction.
South Korea's foreign ministry, in response, said that its quarantine measures for travelers from China were based on science. China's visa suspension for South Korea and Japan marks its first retaliatory move against nations imposing COVID-19 curbs on its travelers. The country abruptly began dismantling its anti-COVID policies in early December after historic protests against the curbs. Beijing has been reporting 5 or fewer daily deaths since the policy change, figures that have been disputed by the World Health Organization and seen as downplaying the severity of the outbreak.
Saudi Arabia will remove COVID-19 restrictions for the 2023 Hajj season. In an announcement today, the kingdom's Ministry of Hajj and Umrah said that the number of pilgrims allowed into the country will also return to pre-pandemic levels.
In 2019, the last year before the pandemic struck, some 2.6 million people performed the Hajj. During the pandemic in 2020, only about 1,000 residents were allowed to perform the Muslim pilgrimage. The Ministry of Hajj said that the kingdom will impose no restrictions, including age limits, for this season. Access was restricted in 2022 to pilgrims aged 18 to 65 who have been fully vaccinated against COVID-19 and did not suffer from chronic diseases. Hajj season is expected to begin on June 26 in 2023. Meanwhile, Minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Religious Affairs, Datuk Dr. Muhammad Naim Mokhtar, said Malaysia has received a full quota for this year's Hajj season at 31,600 pilgrims.
Clashes with police in southern Peru have killed at least 17 people, the deadliest day of anti-government protests in the country so far. The latest casualties bring the death toll from the clashes to 39 since the unrest began in early December, following the ouster of former President Pedro Castillo. The protests, which called for early elections and the release of Castillo, resumed last week after a lull during the year-end holidays. Protesters are also demanding the resignation of new President Dina Boluarte, the closure of Congress, as well as changes to the constitution. Castillo is serving 18 months of pre-trial detention on charges of rebellion after an attempt to dissolve Congress ahead of his own impeachment. Meanwhile, Bulate has supported a plan to bring forward the elections by 2 years to 2024, along with judicial investigations into whether security forces acted with excessive force. However, nationwide clashes with security forces continue to take place, with protests reported in about 13% of Peru's provinces on Monday. A spate of child abuse cases in Malaysia recently should have all of us questioning what red flags were ignored that could have prevented at-risk children from being abused. On Consider This, tonight we ask our guests how to hold adults accountable for the protection of children. And that is coming up right after AWANI Tonight. That is all we have for you on AWANI Tonight. My name is Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.